Hello, good morning, good morning. Make sure my volume is up. I hope you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, let me know. All right, today, I ain't gonna do a long life today, but just want to share a little thought in my mind. Something, you know, I was listening to some conversations not too long ago, and they was talking about timelines of what people thought or what the mindset of the people at the time of their timeline. And to be honest, this is why I said, as humans, man, we have to have, common sense to a lot of things, and we can understand that older days, historically days, the information that the people had at that time wasn't, I would say, not what we have today. Or maybe they did. We don't really have much proof, but we know even though they have monuments and buildings and things that questionable for them to have at this moment in time. I mean, at the time, compared to what we have today, because there's things that they did that we can't even replicate today. So, they might have technology that we didn't have today, but, or maybe we're just not understanding certain mathematics based on how they view things at the time. But it makes sense to understand that timelines do matter, and it's also separated or separate, meaning that when I say separate, I mean they call timeline for a reason. Now, timeline is a modern English word, of course, or modern word. I mean, but it describes what we're talking about, right? But timeline, it mean by what it is, timeline. So basically, let's say year one, or let's say, because the years wasn't counted, as the way it is today, you know, because we had to start over after the death of Christ, right? So before the death of Christ, the we had another millions of years prior, you know. So let's talk about the timeline of what people mindset was like. Let's go about 100 BC or 24 BC, or anything before Christ, any timeline before Christ, right? We're not talking about after Christ. Even after Christ is a timeline, but we want to go back before Christ, because the reason why I'm focusing on before Christ is because when Moses created the Torah, that was a timeline. And in that timeline, they had a different mindset. They had a mindset. The people had a way of living. They believe the understanding of life was different. The education they had was different. The translation or description or meaning to things, a lot of it was different. So when we study history and we try to understand their timeline, you also have to pay attention to the way how these people minds were. You got to put your mind at their mindset, what their thoughts, what they understand, how they feel, how they view the world. And you got to kind of look at the way we lived it in the present not viewed the same as they viewed their world at the time. Because they had different cultures and things that we find diabolical today, or we think it's not, you know, healthy or moral today. You know what I mean? Because they was doing sacrifices. Like, let's use the word sacrifice. Let's go with sacrifices. Pretty much every tribe, not every, but the majority of the tribes was doing some kind of sacrifice for whatever they believe in. Whether it's they sacrifice as an animal, some of them is human sacrifice, some of them they'll just do burnt offerings, some of them would do sail on boats or whatever it is they was doing. Some of them would probably cut the hair or, depends, put tattoos, whatever it is they was doing. They made sacrifices to their understanding of their timeline at that time. Can we mix the present day with the timeline? And this is why I brought in the Bible. My understanding of the Bible at the time of Moses' timeline, it wasn't about religion per se. Because Moses didn't believe, he didn't do the whole one God thing at one point. Because he was raised in Egypt. And Egypt doesn't have one God, you know? So when he broke away from Egypt, I kind of want to say, hmm, I kind of want to say whoever wrote the Bible, the Old Testament, the Old Bible, had an idea of a manipulation for the people. Like they kind of had a plan. Like they foresee an idea to control the people. Because people at the time, there was bamboozled or there was a maze or fear by the things that nature can provide. Like lightning, thunders, rains, earthquakes, tsunamis, monsoon, tornadoes. All these things was like, scary to these people, because they didn't know how to control it. They didn't know if it was, you know, they don't know what natural disasters was at the time until, in the more modern day, we tend to use science to analyze these things and understand that thunder, lightning, rain, monsoons, all these things are natural behaviors of the earth, right? When it comes to the Bible, we have to put our minds in the timeline. When we read the book, you have to think about the people at that time. You have to understand how they think. You have to imagine what they did. By reading the book, you have to put your mind at their mindset at the time. The question is, did they really believe, about a God above what they see? Or did they put things in a perspective of a natural disaster? Meaning that the lightning was a god, you know, the thunder was a god, the monsoons was a god, drought was a god. You know what I'm saying? When drought come, they probably say God was upset with us, so he sent drought on the land. When the earth rumbled, God was probably mad or whatever the case is. And when the rain was crying, they said God was crying. You know what I'm saying? Um, and in some cases they'll do sacrifices and to please the God and all these different things. Now they didn't call him God, of course, because at the time the word God, wasn't in their mouth, right? But when they translated, you know, the understanding of these people was not viewing the book. Because remember when Moses wrote the book, they didn't when they left Egypt, they didn't have a book. He created the book afterwards. And the book was written, I would say, either on the journey or it was written once they got back to Israel and he had to sit. He had to sit. He couldn't go into Israel. He had to sit in the mountain before just he could see Israel beyond the terrain. But you gotta also ask another question too. When Moses was writing about Exodus, how did he get to Adam and Eve? Who told him about Adam and Eve? Who gave him the story? You know what I'm saying? When Moses was living in Egypt, he learned the ways of the Egyptians. He learned about the gods of the Egyptians. And the God of the Egyptians was not meant as a physical God. It was the sun was the physical character, but they mimicked the character on earth as a human to represent the sun. So they're saying the sun sending the spirit and energy through them to communicate with the people. And the people can't deny the sun. So it's a lot of it was some bamboozle stuff. You kind of bamboozle the people to make them think that you is talking to the sun. So they would also dress up in some like weird costumes and shit to make the people feel like it's real. But also I think the modern day race of people, or whenever, you know, the Jesus story came to play, when they started creating the whole Christianity type mindset, they utilize the concepts of the Egyptian style of living, or they see how the people are so easily bamboozled into believing something that they push that narrative to sway their minds to believe that there's one deity, there's one God or something. But yet there's multiple gods in the book. There's multiple deities to worship outside of the Bible as well. So basically what I'm saying is the book is not described or not break down as what we think it is today. It wasn't a character. It wasn't a characters of something greater or outside of what the people see. They were just basically analyzing and basically how I should say using metaphors to describe how they was living at the time. That's my understanding. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. I don't think it was that deliberate. Because this, like for example, when you say open up the Red Sea, when you open up the river Nile for them to walk across the river Nile, my understanding to that is more of like, I would say that it was a low tide, maybe something that's maybe uncommon. Maybe there was like a tsunami coming or something, and the tide got really low, and then they crossed the river. Though because the river is pretty wide. Um, I mean, it could have been some other fantasy way of looking at it, but there's no way to prove that, right? That's a magical thing to happen. Hmm. But no, you really got to think about it. You have to put your mind in those people. Even for the context of the Torah itself, the Old Testament, right? It was never written for the population of people. It was just for the Israelites. It was focused on the Israelites only. And when I say Israelites, I'm talking about, the only reason we call them Israelites is because the name of the land of those people was, you know, the name of the land was Israel. So they name them, they pretty much the word Israelite is just a representation for the people that live there, right? When Moses took everybody back to Israel, that was the name of the land, Israel. I my point, the way how I understand the book is this: Israel is the land, and the people in the land, but the people who came from Egypt that lived in the land of Israel, they didn't have no rules and laws, because when they was doing the 40-year journey back to Israel, they wasn't following the rules and laws. They was out of whack. You know what I mean? Moses had to put them in shape. He had to create some kind of law, some kind of governing system for them. And that's what the book was generally for. You know what I'm saying? Due to the understanding that in Egypt they had raw set, you know, Anu and them type of godly stuff, which is representative of the sun, the moon, the stars, stuff like that. He created a replica of a god, but he put it as a one god perspective. You know what I'm saying? But he still had other gods in the Bible, though. You know, um, they didn't have the name like Jesus and stuff. We had the Anunnakis and all those different things. You know what I mean? But like I said, at the end of the day, it was rules and laws for these people to live in Israel. That's generally what the book was all about. It had nothing to do with, you know, religionist perspective. It was, you know what I'm saying? Hope you get it, where I'm coming from. Because then, remember, Exodus is about Moses. What about Genesis? How did Moses know about Genesis? Where did he get the information from? You know what I'm saying? When he went to Mount Sinai, did God tell him, you know, this is what happened? You know what I'm saying? That's like he was like having a sit down with his writer, and God is just like telling him, like, yeah, write this, write that. Let me tell you a story about how the world was created. You gotta kind of put the timeline together. This story was created. I mean, I don't know if you wrote it in the process of them traveling for 40 days or 40 nights. Cause they wandered the desert for 40 days. I mean, I think it was I think it's a 40, I don't remember. I think it's 40 days or something like that. I don't remember how much days, but I know it's 40 something. I gotta get my straight. I don't remember how much days it was again. I forgot. But anyway, and then again, if you really think about it, don't quote me because I'm not sure I'm correct. I have to look that up to find out if I'm correct or not. I think they wandered the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Didn't Noah was on when the God flooded the earth wasn't for 40 days and 40 nights. You see what I'm saying? You see the comparison? You know what I'm saying? The story doesn't like make it's almost like like it's like the copying is they're trying to make the stuff up as they go, from my point of view. But anyway, I'm not gonna stay long, man. I just wanted to highlight my point of saying, when we read the Bible, people have to think of the timeline, and we have to put our minds in the concept of how those people think at the time. That's like, you live even personally today. You got people who live in the US, you got people who live in Australia, you got people who live all over the world, right? If these people have no connection with other people in the world, and even though we do have connections to this day, every nation and even tribes have a certain understanding about their culture and how they functionalize in it. The things that they see, the things that they practice, the things that they worship, or whatever the case is. You gotta put that in the perspective of how those people think. Because that's their timeline. They're not in our timeline. That's their timeline. In the US, you do this, you do that. But when in England, it's a whole other conversation. You know? Imagine we didn't have cell phones and things the way we do today. The world would be completely different. You know what I mean? So when it comes to the Bible, like I'm saying, I think we need to think about those people at how they think at the time. A lot of stuff that was happening naturally, It wasn't about, something outside of the earth. There was more thinking of the earth, meaning that, using, for example, like a thunder or lightning, there wasn't like, there's something above the earth doing. No, they were saying the earth is doing, it's mad or it's upset or whatever the case is. They represented it to the earth. Just like how they see the sun in the sky, they think that was the sun is the one that was the sun and the earth came together, and then the moon, or if you want to say the moon or space, you know what I'm saying? That give life to the earth. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man. I think I'm gonna get, I'm gonna come back to this conversation another time because there's I need to brush up a little bit on a lot of stuff. Because some of the things I kind of forgot. But my only message today was we have to put us, when we talk about timelines, we have to analyze those timelines as if we was those people at the time. Would those, like, I can guarantee that if we was to meet those people today and we talk to them as we are talking to them, and we talk to them like, the Bible being this and the Bible doing that, I'm pretty much sure they're not gonna agree. They're probably gonna be like, nah, that's not what we was talking about. The Bible is not about this specific God or whatever. It was the laws. Moses is God. You know, Moses Moses God. Did this, did that, or the God is on the mountain. They're not gonna say the God in the sky and all that stuff because he went to the mountain. So to the people, God is on the mountain. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm gonna leave you right there. I'm gonna do another topic on this, but I'm gonna brush up a little bit on it. All right, peace.